Chapter 40 Homecoming. The next morning, Phoebe phoned, begging me to come over. I can't stand it, she said. I want a witness. For what? I just want a witness. Did you tell your father about your mother and are you kidding? Phoebe said. You should see him. He and Prudence spent all last night and this morning cleaning the house. They've scrubbed floors and bathrooms. They dusted like fiends. They did ever so much laundry and ironing. And they vacuumed. Then they took a good look around. My father said, "Maybe it looks too good. Your mother will think we can function without her." So they messed things up a little. He is very put out with me that I wouldn't help. I tried to think of a good reason why I could not go to Phoebe's. I did not want to be a witness to anything, but in the end, I felt guilty for running away the day before, so I agreed. When I got to her house, Phoebe, Mr. Winterbottom, and Prudence were sitting there staring at each other. "Didn't she say what time she was coming?" Mr. Winterbottom asked. Prudence said, "No, she did not, and I wish you would quit acting as if it was my fault that she did not say more than she did." Mr. Winterbottom was a wreck. He jumped up to straighten a pillow, sat back down, and then leaped up to mess up the pillow again. He went out in the yard and walked around in circles. He changed his shirt twice. "I hope you don't mind that I'm here," I said. "Why would I mind?" Mr. Winterbottom said. Just as I thought they would go stark raving mad, a taxi pulled up outside. "I can't look," Mr. Winterbottom said, escaping to the kitchen. "I can't look either," Phoebe said. She followed her father and I followed Phoebe. "Well, gosh," Prudence said, "I don't know what has gotten into everybody. Aren't you excited to see her?" From the kitchen we heard Prudence open the front door. We heard Mrs. Winterbottom say, "Oh, sweetie." Mr. Winterbottom wiped the kitchen counter. We heard Prudence gasp and her mother say, "I'd like you to meet Mike." "Mike?" Mr. Winterbottom said. He was quite red in the face. I was glad there was no axe in the house, or I'm fairly certain he would have picked it up and headed straight for Mike. Phoebe said, "Now, Dad, don't do anything too rash." "Mike?" he repeated. Mrs. Winterbottom called, "George? Phoebe? We heard her say to Prudence, where are they? Didn't you tell them we were coming?" Mr. Winterbottom took a deep breath. He said, "Phoebe, I'm not sure you or Sal should be around for this." "Are you kidding?" Phoebe said. He took another deep breath. "Okay," he said. "Okay, here we go." He stood up straight and tall and walked through the living room. Phoebe and I followed. Honest and truly, I think Phoebe nearly fainted dead away on the carpet. There were two reasons for this. The first one was that Mrs. Winterbottom looked different. Her hair was not only short but also quite stylish. She was wearing lipstick, mascara, and a little blush on her cheeks, and her clothes were altogether unlike anything I had ever seen her in. A white t-shirt, blue jeans, and flat black shoes. Dangling from her ears were thin silver hoop earrings. She looked magnificent, but she did not look like Phoebe's mother. The second reason that I think Phoebe nearly fainted dead away was that there was Mike Bickle, Phoebe's potential lunatic, in her own living room. It was one thing to think he was coming, and another thing to actually see him standing there. I didn't know what to think. For a second, I thought maybe Mike had kidnapped Mrs. Winterbottom and was bringing her back for some ransom money, or maybe he was now going to do away with the rest of us. But I kept thinking of seeing them together the day before. And besides, Mrs. Winterbottom looked too terrific to have been held captive. Mrs. Winterbottom did look a little frightened, but not of Mike. She seemed afraid of her husband. "Dad," Phoebe whispered, "that's the lunatic." "Oh, Phoebe," her mother said, pressing her fingers to her cheek, and when she made that familiar gesture, Phoebe looked as if her heart was splitting into 1,000 pieces. Mrs. Winterbottom hugged Phoebe, but Phoebe did not hug her back.